Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're looking at a couple of smaller cards that have recently been trending on the market. Now, a lot of these probably aren't going to be those huge highlight cards that you see, cards that have gone from being like $10 to $50 out of nowhere. However, they are still important cards for us to pay attention to. With a card that's, say, like $2 before but $5 now, that's a solid 150% return, and with enough quantities, that's a really solid profit margin. At the same time, these cards are great to throw into your trade binders because players are going to want them. They might be willing to give up a little bit of extra value for them, and that's definitely good for you guys. Let's get started. Alright, kicking things off, we're taking a look at a couple of worm monsters, and the first one is Monk of the Tenyi. So we had a couple of new cards revealed to be coming in the next core set, Supreme Darkness, and among them are 3 different Tenyi cards. Those new cards are actually really incredible. They're all like really good. If other decks received support like that consistently, it would just be kind of insane. Tenyi isn't really a deck that's able to function on its own, but they have seen meta play alongside the Sword Soul archetype. The Tenyi cards don't use your normal summon, so you can play with them before going into your Sword Soul cards, and they can be revealed or discarded for your Sword Soul effects as well. Now, Monk may seem sort of weird since it is just a vanilla Link 1 monster, but it is really important. You can special summon the Tenyi and then link into Monk. That gets the Tenyi into the graveyard so that you can banish it and use its effect while still keeping a body on the field. And a lot of the Tenyis are going to require you to control a non-effect monster, so this fits that role as well. Now, obviously, moving forward, we don't know how the format's going to look and if Sword Soul will really have enough stuff to be meta relevant again, but the new Tenyis and the unbanning of Protos might be enough to make the deck interesting. Monk has a few different printings, but it was only ever a holo as a super rare from OTS Tournament Pack 18. That version was down at $1 or so, but it's now up to $2 to $3 each, with copies slowly being eaten up off the market. This card also has a common and rare printing. These used to be worth a couple of bucks each, but are now under $1 now that the deck has fallen out of the meta for the last little while. This is a card that I love digging up out of bulk, since the commons and rares actually do end up being pretty easy to move on various buy lists, so definitely keep an eye out for this card and be sure to set them aside. The other worm monster I want to talk about is Sword Soul of Moye. Moye is a pretty simple card, but it's definitely the best normal summon in the Sword Soul deck. Now, on summon you can reveal a worm or Sword Soul from hand to special summon a level 4 tuner token, which means that Moye plus the reveal gets you a level 8 synchro for free. And when you synchro with Moye and it goes to the graveyard, you get to draw a card as well. So of course, if players are thinking that Sword Soul has the potential to be meta relevant again thanks to the new Tenyi cards, then naturally Moye is going to be one of the first cards that they go and look to pick up. This card was one of the more expensive cards to come out in Burst of Destiny since it was a secret rare, and even though it never got a tin reprint, this card was reprinted in Magnificent Mavens, which really brought its price down. Just a couple of months ago, you could buy the Ultra reprints of Moye for about $2 to $3 as the card was cool, but it wasn't short printed or anything, so it was really easily accessible. Now, however, we see those same Ultras up at $5 to $7 each, and then with the original secrets, those are climbing steadily as well and are back up to $12 to $15. It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with the Sword Soul archetype. The Sword Soul cards are based on an old Chinese tale, and I think that based on the story, we should be expecting another Sword Soul card to be released. So if that happens, I could definitely expect to see this card continuing to go up in value. If we don't see it, this card will probably stay around its current price point until it does get reprinted, since even with the new Tenyi support, this card is still really weak to cards like Valor and Impermanence, which are really popular in the current format. On to the next one, we have number 60, Dugaris the Timeless. Now, Dugaris is a generic rank 4 Xyz monster, and it feels like the sort of thing that will just be used by decks that want to end the game soon. You can detach 2 materials from it to either draw 2 cards and discard 1 but skip your next draw phase, special summon a monster from your graveyard in defense position but skip your next main phase 1, or double the attack power of one of your monsters but then skip your next battle phase. Now, at the moment, this card is being used by the Ryziel strategy, the rank 4 base strategy, coming to the TCG in crossover breakers at the end of the year. I haven't watched too many replays of the deck, but I could definitely see all 3 of its effects being useful to either extend your combos or push for game. This card was just reprinted in Rarity Collection 2, and it was actually one of the more forgettable cards from the set. Basically, every version of this card, even the Platinum Secret Rare, the Ultimate Rare, and the Collector's Rare, is still only like 50 cents or so. However, it's the QCR that has seen a pretty big jump up in price. These were down at $3 to $4, but the card for the quarter century version has shot up to $15 on TCG Player. I don't know, for me, that's a bit too much to be paying for a copy of Dugaris. I personally would much rather own a Platinum one that looks really similar for a small fraction of the cost, or even the Secret Rare just looks really clean and is a great budget alternative. Okay, so maybe this one isn't super cheap, but it's a card that's worth paying attention to. We have Mermail Abyss Pike. Now this card is a really good card for the Mermail strategy, which just got new support in Rage of the Abyss. I had to play against it like 3 times at my locals at the Sneak Peek tournament, and that deck can do some really crazy things. The most annoying thing is them discarding or sending cards to the graveyard as cost, since they're triggering the effects off of that, and you can't imperm or anything because it's sending as cost. Anyways, Abyss Pike is an important card for the strategy. It's summoned off of the new Mermail Shadow Squad, and it lets you discard a water monster to search for a level 3 water monster from your deck. Now this lets you discard an Atlantean Dragoons to get another search, and then it itself searches for Deep Sea Minstrel, which lets you rip a card from your opponent's hand as well as look at it, so they can get rid of a Nibiru or maybe even your only starter. Unfortunately, Abyss Pike hasn't been reprinted in quite some time, and it has just 2 printings. It was originally a rare from Abyss Rising. That version is already up to $5 each, and then its one holo printing is as a super rare from Astral Pack 8 that came out literally back in 2015. Those are going to cost you around $20 to $25 per copy. It feels like this card is due to be reprinted in either an OTS tournament pack or in the quarter century bonanza, especially since we just had confirmation that we're getting even more Mermail support in Supreme Darkness. That said, assuming that you don't want to play the deck, I would definitely be looking to offload these while they are seeing so much hype. So this is one that we've definitely talked about on Market Watch before. We next have Heatwave. So this is a card that was really popular in the OCG. This card has to be activated at the start of your main phase 1, but it stops both players from normal or special summoning effect monsters until your next draw phase. This card is used by the Tenpai Dragon strategy when it's going first. Typically, I think that they do side it in, since a lot of players are going to force Tenpai players to try to go first, so this sort of punishes the opponent and sets them up to be OTK'd the following turn. Now recently, Tenpai Dragon has been a pretty strong contender, but Heatwave never really saw that much success here in the TCG. And then on the most recent ban list, we had Sangan Summoning and Pot of Prosperity, both hit to 1, which really did hurt the consistency of the deck. However, it still is pretty strong, and it seems that some players are jumping back onto Heatwave as a side deck option, as it has seen a ton of movement on the market. We currently see all versions of this card trending upwards in price. This card was a rare from back in Starstrike Blast, and then its 2 different common printings actually both came in different Speed Duel products. Any version of the card that you want right now is going to cost you around $10 to $12. I don't know if this deck is really going to be that strong, since it seems to definitely be a step behind decks like Yubel and Azumina Snake Eye, but we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with the next couple of big events, starting with YCS Niagara this weekend. Okay, so here's one that I definitely expect to go up in the next couple of weeks. It's Retaliating Sea. So this card is a hand trap, but it has a really specific application, so it's not popular a lot of the time. If your opponent activates a spell that has an effect that special summons a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you summon it this way, then while it's on the field, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Now this card is actually something that I was citing back when the Shaddoll structure deck came out, since that deck was really popular at my locals, and you could summon this and they don't get to trigger the effects of their Shaddoll monsters. Now in the upcoming format, this card has a pretty solid side deck application, as it can be used against decks like Azumina Snake Eye, Memento, Melodious, Chimera, Branded, Voiceless Voice, amongst others. Also, Yassine did do an entire video discussing the uses of this card in the current format. Definitely go check out his discussion if you haven't already. Now, Retaliating Sea has a couple of different printings. It has several common versions that are all really cheap, and then it also got an ultra printing in Ghosts from the Past that's also cheap and hasn't really moved in price at all. The one version that I'm keeping an eye on are the super rares from OTS Tournament Pack 4. That version is currently sitting at just $2, but since it's the only super printing, it looks noticeably different from the Ultra, and it's also from quite an old OTS tournament pack. I could definitely see some players pushing this card up in price as it gradually gets eaten up off of the market. This card does fall off pretty hard once Crossover Breakers drops because it's not very effective against Ryziel or Malice. Keep an eye on this card and pick up a set of the Ultras for yourself to play with so that you can definitely move the supers if they do spike. And one final card for us to talk about for today, it is Golden Rule. Now, of all the things that could have happened in 2024, Jesse Cotton making top 32 at YCS Cancun with Crystal Beast Snake Eye was not on my bingo card, but apparently that's something that happened. I definitely don't know enough about the Crystal Beast cards to really understand the deck, but apparently it can be pretty decent. Golden Rule itself is a pretty cool card. You place 2 Crystal Beasts from your deck to your spell trap zone, then special summon a Crystal Beast from your hand or graveyard and equip it with this card. So I think ideally you want to place 2 monsters and then special summon Ruby Carbuncle, which will summon the 2 monsters that you just placed. I just don't know exactly how it is that you're getting access to Carbuncle consistently, since Golden Rule cannot summon from the deck, it's just hand or graveyard. Anyways, Crystal Beasts are obviously a popular archetype with a lot of the player base, and I think that Jesse topping with the deck will get the deck a ton of attention, and casual players are going to want to try and build it, though obviously I don't think any of them will see the same success that Jesse did. That aside, a lot of the Crystal Beast cards are pretty cheap, since it did get a structure deck that reprinted basically the entire deck. Golden Rule is the one card I would look out for, since it has just one secret rare printing from Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge. Now historically, this card has always just been a couple of bucks, and then even recently it hasn't really moved that much price-wise. However, I do want to bring it up because I think that the deck and the cards that Jesse used in the strategy will be sought after by players at your locals wanting to try the deck out for themselves. This isn't something that you have to offload right away, but I'd definitely stick them into your trade binder for when people ask for them to see if you can get some extra value. Alright guys, that is all I have for this episode. I definitely prefer going over some of these smaller price movements. These are some of the things that I like picking up for myself because I feel like I just don't have as much downside if I'm buying cards that are 25, 50 cents, $1, because it's not going to go very much lower, but I have so much more potential upside, especially if I am buying several cards at once. So it's definitely something for you guys to consider when you're picking up cards at your locals or anything like that. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.